The Dreamer by Pamela Ryan and Peter Sis. Naphtali heard it even when the press wasn't running. When he sorted the metal type into a printer's drawers, while he ran entrance, and even now as he whistled and slept in the end of the long day. He hoped that another of his essays would appear in the paper soon. Uncle Orlando had promised, but he had so preoccupied the last few weeks that Naphtali had not bothered him about it again. Besides, he was worried about his uncle's strange behavior, dashing in and out of the office and never saying there was he going, sending Naphtali to deliver letters to one person or another, then making him swear not to tell a soul. Meeting people after dark across the street on the corner and in the rain instead of in his office. Click-clack, click-clack, The door swung open and Uncle Orlando rushed in. He slammed the door behind him and began to shut windows. His forehead was full and his voice tight. Naphtali, set up some chairs and put blankets over the windows. Why? Said Naphtali. The new group that became advocates for Mapuche wants to organize a protest against developers. They need a place to meet tonight, so I have offered the office. They will be here in a few hours. Maybe the voice of the larger group will do some good. But Naphtali, no one must know about the meeting. Naphtali picked up the rage and cleaned his hands. I understand. If the developers find out, said Uncle Orlando, there is no imagining what they might do. They have already killed so many. A thin, whiting fear began to worm through Naphtali's mind. But how will you do that, everyone who comes to the meeting on your side? Uncle Orlando unfolded the blanket and handed it to Naphtali. You will stand at the window and let me know if anyone suspicious comes inside. And if one of the developers sends a spy, he shrugged his shoulders. Then that is a chance I must take. After dawn, Naphtali stood at the window, peeking out from beneath the blanket and keeping the ball in post. How would he distinguish a developer from the concerned citizen? What would happen if he allowed the wrong person to inside? And if he signaled to Uncle Orlando, would there be confrontation with guns? It was not as difficult as Naphtali had imagined. His people crowded inside of a small newspaper office. They seemed so far and humble than if the shopkeepers who had been to his house for dinner. They were not the owners of the shops. They were just the clerks. They were not the ranchers. They were the field workers. They were not the politicians. They were the bakers, the seamstresses, and the blacksmiths. Although Naphtali looked at it during the meeting, he heard everything that went on behind him. Uncle Orlando's sincere voice as he talked about the size of the Machupi, the plans for peaceful protests to commentary for respect for humanity, and when the meeting was over and the people filed out. Naphtali saw their hopeful faces, and as they clasped Uncle Orlando's hands, thanked him and said goodbye. After he helped Uncle Orlando put away the chairs, uncovered the windows, and locked off the office, and they walked together in silence. In his heart, Naphtali still felt the energy that had filled the room earlier. Above them, the stars seemed to pulse. Had the heavens felt as uprising of all of the good intentions too? When it was time for Uncle Orlando to go in the opposite direction, Naphtali asked, will the protest work? It will work if people are not afraid and if they can find the confidence to do the right thing. But nephew, it is far more difficult than the time comes to actually speak out. One moment people are strong, the next they are weak. And it is not always their fault. Uncle Orlando turned away. Then, almost as an afterthought, he called back to Naphtali, be safe. Naphtali raised his hands in perturbing. At that moment, he hoped that in the time came he could be strong, but he was not convinced. It was late when they arrived home. Naphtali went to his room. The moon cast glow of opals and the rows of sea glass, shells, and insects, now displayed in boxes and crates, nailed to the walls. Twins, nets, and seed pods sat on the dresser in a joyful parade. He opened the bottom drawer, pulled out the stuffed ship, and retrieved one of the notebooks he kept buried beneath it. In the moonlight, he could see just enough to capture his sentiments on paper. Then he returned the notebook into the drawer, placed its ruled gradient on top of it, and lay down on his bed. The words he had written wriggled off the page and escaped from the drawer. The letters stacked themselves one on top of the other. Their towers reached higher and higher until they stood majestic and tall, surrounding Naphtali in the city of the promise. Humanity, solidarity, generosity, peace, justice, love. Then a tiny conceited words came along like a hungry to meet it. It began to gnaw on the tall world and chewing their foundation, gulping their pulp, and they swept, popped, and collapsed. And there remained was one fast, satisfied syllable: fear. In the middle of the night, Naphtali woke with a voice without shaking him. "Naphtali, wake up!" He sat up in his bed, stunned and confused. What is it? A man came to the door. "The newspaper office is on fire." Naphtali threw all of his clothes and ran toward the front door. But father blocked his exit and grabbed his arm. "Naphtali, there is nothing that can be done. Go back to bed." Naphtali jerked his arm to father's grasp. He ran the street, joining others already racing to the scene. He looked back and saw father's silhouette in the doorway. Why wasn't he coming to help? The fellows heard massive pounding of his feet as he trotted down the dirt street. When he turned to the corner of the main road, he saw the ball of fire rising into the night. It seemed the entire town was already in front of the building. Some people shouting direction to those who were trying to put out all the fire, others with their hands over their mouths in disbelief, and those trying to keep people back from the danger. Naphtali pushed through the confusion, searching for Uncle Orlando. At last, he found him standing in the street, bewildered, holding a single printer dollar in his hands. Naphtali ran to him. In a daze, Uncle Orlando held up in the door. It was all could save. I ran in, but it was all I could save. A brigade formed, and the people passed buckets of water to build the line. Still, it was a peaceful attempt to squelch a giant flames. Naphtali joined the volunteers, grateful to have something to do with his hands, at the same time troubled by the vulgarity of it all. In the hours when the 12th of the morning, the flames died down. The spectacle of the dread back toward their own homes and businesses. The solid state until that remained is a smoky ash. He could save Uncle Orlando and what bills have now and breathe like a bat of a giant campfire. Why? He asked. Uncle Orlando's voice was slow and measured. Developers think I will give up the cause. They think that because spirits will down panic and worry about the safety in their jobs. In many cases, that will happen and support will disappear. And then the Mapuche will disappear, pushed farther and farther away. And Naphtali thought about the Mapuche boy he met on the river boat and how he and his family had gone in one direction while Naphtali and his family had traveled in one another. It is not fair, said Naphtali. It is not right. We should call the authorities. Uncle Orlando seems eerily calm as he shook his head. It will do no good. It is a responsibility. It was a crime. Ah, yes, Uncle Orlando, with a smirk. Their responsibility. Then it is over, said Naphtali. The murders of the innocent people will continue. Everyone will act as if nothing happened. Uncle Randy stood a little taller. Naphtali, there was always something that can be done. For now, I was the meat on the outside, but one inside that can be never made to be surrounded by true feelings. I will wait. And then I will start again. But how? Where? There are editors who have hired me if not for newspapers here. Then somewhere else, I will be starting by writing more stories that might make people whisper and behind the closed doors. Did you admit every whisper to make a very loud noise? Look around. What did you see? The fellow Lucas' uncle disbelieved. What was there to see? Everything and his uncles had built was now gone. Why was he not fighting mad? Naphtali threw all of his arms. Nothing. I see nothing. The walls are gone. The machines were destroyed. There is nothing left except one empty doorway. They have one. Uncle Randall held his hands to stop Naphtali raining. He walked at a mound of smoking ash and kicked it with his foot. Underneath, glowing the embers of positive heart. You are wrong. Just like Mount Lima. There is always something burning behind the surface. Sometimes it takes years to be rubbed, but eventually it will. But nephew, they might have a silent, La Melina, but they will never silence in my pen. He extended his outstretched hand to Naphtali. Naphtali looked into Uncle's determined face. He did not see a man differed by exhaustion. He saw a man ready to fight the another day. He did not see a man covered a hat too tall in suit. He saw a man covered in whiteness. He did not see a man's red and burly eyes. He saw a tense resolve to speak for those who could not speak for themselves. Naphtali reached down and gripped his uncle's calm palm and held it tight. No, they will be silence in mine. Is fire born of words, or words born of fire? Beep 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 bop I loop 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 beep beep bop bop beep 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 bop 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 beep beep bop I ding 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 ding. Fire. Rosita! Naphtali called from the boy's schoolyard. He waved the paper in the air and rushed down to catch up with her. He handed their Fiend's newspaper. Uncle Randy's first edition, put it in another town. It took him almost 3 years, but he did that. He did it. I cannot wait to tell him congratulations. And I have my own big news. Before he continued, he bent to pick up something shiny from a muddy stream on the side of the road. Naphtali, do you not have enough old keys in your collections? Keys unlock doors, Rosita. One can never have too many. So, tell me your big news, she said. He pulled out the magazine from beneath the books he carried. I have been made a conservatorist for the Carriendo, the magazine published by the students at the University in Santiago. But you'll be not a student in there until the fall. That does not matter. Many people contribute. Look inside. One of the many articles have been printed about Mapuche. Cordillera want more. And they wanted to make the trip by the magazine to soon with Temuco to generate support for their causes in Santiago. So the writers' voices will be hard. The voices against the government, said Rosita. You will know how father feels about writing against the government. It is risky. She opened the magazine and thumbed through the fine Naphtali's article. These people are writing about the fearless and justice. They were just my heroes, Rosita. They write worlds of steer people's thoughts. They write about changing his world. Changing what is wrong within the world. There are not only students but others too. Poets like Rosita and Scanoli Berrinda who champion free speech. Free speech might get into trouble. Rosita find this article and stand it to the end. Naphtali here by your name, it says you're enrolling the university to become a poet. That means nothing. It was just like a dangerous presumption. Naphtali, you should hide this. You should hide this. I do not think father will hide it. This is presumption. presumption. Naphtali's time. I'm running out of hiding places. When you go to the university, then you can do as you please. I wish that will be entirely true, he said, but I will send him a circular about my writing. At least I can be designed if students at the French language become a teacher or translator. He alerted the boys and many fathers to pay back to the way in business word. So father have given up the medical profession, said Esferdita. My bad graces, she struggled. He shrugged. Father changed my destiny to business. At least I will admittedly be able to read French literature. Promise you will keep your grades at university. Naphtali, or he will not send you an allowance. You are too skinny. You needed to eat. Do not worry. I will follow father's path as long as I can. Promise. A frog with a large bird flew overhead. Naphtali and Rodita looked at the watch and precision of fitting wings. Can you take us me hours of spoonbills? Said Rodita. No, they can be so far away. So Naphtali continued to walk, his head titled back and his eyes upward. When he was almost stepped out in a huge hole in the street, Rodita grabbed his arm and pulled him to safely. Look at where you're going out of the birds, he still himself. Thank you, Rodita. You know, I'm going to miss you when I go to Santiago, he laughed. If you can stay out of trouble until then. He wretched to stay out of trouble is not too much, even for me. A few days later, Naphtali arrived home to find his drawers to ransack of the notebook stranded all over the floor of his room. Before he could pick them up, father appeared in the doorway holding a copy of Caridad. You are no better than your uncle and Flameng to the community. He flipped opened the magazine to Naphtali's article and slammed to the page. And what do I read? Nothing. Naphtali raised half to the become. His face puffed and reddened. Anything of consequence. Instead, it says you will be nothing more than a lazy thief. It was a mistake. That's all. It was a mistake. All your words to do with any paper. Said Naphtali. I forbid you to abandon and change to a sapphic profession, and you will not use my money to such a venture. Do you hear me, Naphtali? Naphtali looked at the floor. It is only due to my madras pleading that I have tortured the hobby of yours. Thus my laziness has used up. I have listened to Arenda recite your essays time and again at my own table. And when people appalled, it is only the polygons. Do you think no one was really thinking? There was nothing about embarrassment. You can do our family. Imagine the humiliation, but then humiliation when a shopkeeper brought his article. He says he chooses come to my house and any color if the entire family is dedicated to this cause. Father's face flushed with anger. This will be no more writing in the house. He grabbed his notebook and flung out of the window. Loose papers falling from inside. They have worded trying to play. Father flung another notebook and another. Naphtali hurried back to the porch. Father drew the wheels and chose slap, stop, stop. Father chased her full blows to the race and Malani and like himself. Naphtali backed away to an uncomfortable frenzy and pushing himself against the wall. Why his father drew out the book and next? Naphtali himself. When every moment was gone, father marched from the book. Naphtali sank to his house and dropped his hat into his hands. He hoped that the wind would not assume this absconded with any of his loose pages. He would be waiting for a while until they were sure so father was not looking. Then he would collect some tapes and where they could never be found. Lolita appeared in the doorway, their face and on their eyes are large and with fear. He looked at his dishearable room. Naphtali, he looked up. I guess I could not stay out after it all. They heard father's whistle 2 times, 3 times, and over when stopping. Lolita walked to the room. Has he gone mad? Naphtali jumped and rushed to her side. A promise of a smoke drink of the tore from the pile of notebooks and set up the fire in the middle of the Naphtali yelled. Middle of the street. Naphtali yelled. No! He blew it from the room and motioning the power and cells blew it half to in the street. They're hoping to salvage something that anything that he dared not to reach their flames. Father stood behind him and the basket of the bonfire. Fire, his eyes swelled and his mouth blowing the whistle again and again. Lolita and my mother hurried toward the street. Neighbors peered from the windows. Wagon driver stopped. All of the watching Naphtali's innermost feelings turned from yellow to orange and blue. His thoughts and cares and affection grew singled and curled. The remains of the soul fluttered into the sky like gray snowflakes. He disappeared and fury about injustice. Flame upward and disappeared, and there was nothing he could do to. Finally, father spat out of the whistle and yelled, "Now we will do anything what you will become." Now, then he stormed into the house. Naphtali could not move. It was as if all of the breath had been sucked in the body. Definitely my mother followed his father. The neighbors went back to their lives. The wagons rolled in the street again. Naphtali remained still and dazed until Lolita came and stood next to him. Without saying a word, they stepped into the pile of ashes. Naphtali nudged them aside with his boot. Underneath, a tiny ember blinked, where the heaven of the last stars. A few minutes later, Naphtali sat on the edge of his bed. He held the letter and received earlier that day, telling him ancestral news. Roger saw one of the points, and Naphtali saw the admirer had been arrested during the student protest and hauled off to the prison where he lived. Giant and centrally and disappointment. Associate Naphtali, how could the government arrest arrested. Griffin will have disappointment. So let Robert arrest someone to have writing is new, and his honest heart to be true should be all of the right opposite of the beliefs that are their Tresonius. They were not to abuse the dark one. It is not a better one take. We should have rather than allowed them to make up their own minds and suit up and pace and feel the arrogance to risk opponents to defend to the back, in the light of the clicking castle writing shadows on the walls and finish a new poem for Clary. Now he had a dilemma. This poet is no appear Next week, not only in the university magazine, but simultaneously in a Santiago newspaper. Father knew many people in Santiago, but Neftali could not take the one chance that father could discover he was disabling him. Besides that, he could not stop thinking about father had said. Then he was an embarrassment to the city. Neftali signed up and put down on his pen. He picked up the local Tomago newspaper and read an article about the worst of the great winter. The Neftali, the writer's name seems so unusual, exotic. If only he had such a name. He wrote his last name in a smart piece of paper. Then he wrote it aloud again and again. He pulled a book and Italian poetry from his noted, writing on the paper next to the paper stain. Then Miss slid off the paper, marched across the room, and little threshold stood out, and the world will not be the homework then. The farewell was neither too light nor too heavy. These labors were not written to be written, that the color was soft and the intonation not to offend, but bright color enough. It was like a perfect illusion. It was a perfect fit. He picked up his pen again, and the edge of the poem, instead of signing the words, it was Pablo instead of signing the Neftali race, he wrote Pablo Neruda. He could see the name to his father and the humiliation of having the son who was a poet. Maybe he would be lost to himself until my team taken a chance, and after all, they were rhythm the locomotive changing uphill. Thus, the manager began from the inside or from the inside. Oh, Pablo Neruda, Pablo Neruda, Pablo Neruda. The collection's morning is slowly packets belonging into a metal truck. Metal truck, clothes, books, pens, of course, something that was happen would never to be old. He has shed the other richest book for saving. Do not let go of in flames. He smiled. I'll get him growing my name. Do not say goodbye to send me yet. My mother and I time to leave. Did somebody come up from your trunk? He nodded. Everything is ready. Father and ready in the floor and Dorky followed over his arm. Neftali spoke into the another excited. When they focused on excited gave you the wild further warning of first see the love out of the children that who was lot of case was means of being and hateful, or someone and cruel by yourself that test pass of a journal of a low anymore to control their own future. Goodbye, Neftali. Father gave him a card of. Goodbye, Father, he said, and then he has steel skin and hoses and has had each other's tricks of joy with his typed. He returned of the envelope and he was book strung on his inside just like you. When he read the words of his arms and swung into her house, you must be my emissary, and stepped down because of Tomago. He left. I promise I will like you every week. The train was side of the wheel, the words on the other. He walked and toward the platform and hissing in the train. Before he boarded, my mother gave the blankets we had wrapped years ago. In the fear of a machupi in the crypto to keep you warm, you are skin and bounces. These kids doesn't want each other to shake and hold him tight. He returned embarrassed, but that little will string inside just like you. Then he wrapped it around in his arms and strung her around. You should able to make out. He left and wheels every week. The train wheels, the step board, and those latest of a city, the road of first class of a car ship of peanuts. The smell damp wool from the rain-soaked pumpkins and the wet feeders, which is handed to a smoky. Being a student in a poet would be discouraged. From the windows, he watched the millions of Aquarido into which they had broadened the view, and still half was left, and there were abandoned towns on to like the towns that assumed themselves and been left at him. Trunk put on his back, and Raul had his hand soaked in a father's cap. He slung a mattress blanket all over him, and he stepped out into a street of Santiago to make his way in the world. They were a city of the big city, as he written for the assistants at the weather. Porter had laid down his path, and he was told about that was like the tools like barely enough the morning to which, and it was so cold I worship father's cold cave and my mother's blanket. He has no end looked and the deep with himself. In heart, I was broken, and he broke and sister. Then he did not agree with the penguins in the penguins brother, and he was not agree with the polygamists at the university politics of this country. He wrote, all of you had changed his name his history name was like, even to his reading the story of the giant's forest burst into a political persuasions as the resonance the sap of the pine cone as crap as the shell's beetle, and the sentence grew long and then pulled up shore, shaking in the tempo of the wave that upon the shore sails gently in the symphonic song of the long harmonica. Wait a minute, I want to tie my hair, so just 1 second please. Okay. His furrow became a sea that pointed, stabbers, and burned. His convictions played up with an nonsense determination of a printing press, and his affections became poems as warm as the wool of the well-loved sheep. Pablo Neruda's poem trapped through the mud. The field worker read his words and said, his hands have moved the earth as mine have. His poems knocked at the door and mentions. The wealthy read his works and said, he has climbed up the same ladder. His poems sat on the table of the baker, who said, he knows it, what I feel while working bread. His poems merged on the cobblestones. The shopkeeper leaned from his counter and beat down for his customers and said, do you know him? He is my brother. The poems became books, and that passed from the hand to hand. Wait a minute. Did I read this one? Oh, yes. Oh, wait a minute. The books travel all over fences and the bridge and across the borders, soaring from continent to continent until he had passed a true thousand of skids through the hole in the fences of a multitude of people in every corner of the world, their wings and bidding for the same pulse, their hands eager to feel about there that he could dream. Ting, 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 ting. Thank you for listening to everyone in this. Today it is Dawn from Dreamer, and let's meet again in the another book. This is Dawn of the Dreamer by Pam Ron and Peter Says. Thank you for listening, everyone. Bye!